Volume 1 undercooked the turkey on Thanksgiving, Volume 2 ruined Christmas, but I refuse to accept that the series finale would ruin 2025. But I have a strange feeling that they fucked it. Endings are hard. Just ask Game of Thrones, or Dexter, or Umbrella Academy, or Dexter. So Stranger Things is finally over. And what a journey it's been. It's kind of surreal that it is actually over. I've loved this show for 10 years. It's such a huge part of my life. I've loved this show so very much. Overall, I found this episode and the season itself to be underwhelming, disappointing, and I found this final episode to be rather safe and predictable. I think there are about 4 or 5 major issues that speak to why this series finale doesn't work, and particularly why this season as a whole doesn't work. Now, this is no Game of Thrones. There are some moments that are deeply satisfying, and generally speaking, how everyone finishes up, I am mildly satisfied with to a certain extent. But I just think all of the issues of the entire season are still prevalent here. There's way too many fake out deaths. There's no stakes. Vecna has gone from a really scary villain to just a very generic CGI monster villain. And once again, the show has abandoned its beautiful Spielbergian-esque magical little E.T. adventure for this big Marvel-styled end-of-the-world CGI weightless nonsense that visually is stunning and spectacular, and I did have a bit of fun with all of it, but it's just not really why I loved this show to begin with. I feel like the show wants to have its cake and eat it too, in that it wants to be this big CGI giant thing where the end of the world is at stake, but they don't want to commit to actually making it feel like that by killing any characters or having any weight or tension to anything. There is no real consequence to anything. So they want to do that, but then they also want to end the show and be like, they're all just playing D&D and everyone lives happily ever after. And I just feel like I'm happy for the show to have been that and to end this way. But then why did we spend 7 episodes pretending it was this other show? And I just find that kind of frustrating, because even when season 4 got very, very big, it still felt quite personal because Vecna was number 1. He was the original, and 11 is 11. And so there's a human, close, personal kind of conflict there. And that's really all they were fighting. And now he's just a big CGI monster that wants to crush his universe into our universe. And it just gets so big, but it doesn't ever take the bold dramatic plunge to be that show and to make it feel like that show. So it's like pretending to be this other show. And then when it ends, it's like, oh, we're just a fun little D&D crew having fun and having fun little horror light action adventure shenanigans. And I'm happy for that show, and I loved that show. I liked when it was what if Spielberg and Stephen King had a little baby. I just don't know why they had to make it also a Marvel, Game of Thrones, big end of the world situation. It just feels, I don't know, they wanted to do too much, but they never wanted to commit, and that just really frustrates and disappoints me. So this is going to be big spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, please turn away. And if for some reason you don't want to watch it, but you just want to know, does somebody of importance die? Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers! No. Nobody dies that you care about. Steve does not die. They even pretend to kill Steve, and then it cuts to black, like it's cutting to an ad break, and then he doesn't die. And it's probably the single most embarrassing moment of the show. It just comes across as like really cheap and unearned. And it's like you're just trying to like manipulate my emotions. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You refuse to kill Max. You can't even kill Ted Wheeler. Why should I believe you're going to kill Steve? It lacks all dramatic tension, all weight, all sense of stakes and feeling. And it feels like a really embarrassing fake out. They've faked out maybe every single character in the show dying 3 times. But this is the one where everybody, because Steve's everyone's favorite character, has been afraid that Steve is going to die in this final season. And they know that, so they've put the most uninteresting, unimaginably boring, lame way to fake kill him. And then it's just like, bam, Jonathan grabs his hand and he doesn't fall off the tower. And not for a single second did I expect him to actually die. That 2-second ad break cut to black, I've never felt more sure about anything in my entire life than Steve wasn't going to die. And that's when I realized that nothing the show does is going to emotionally connect with me, because it's lost all sense of consequence. There is no real consequence. Max came back to life, and not only is she not blind anymore, but she's just totally fine. And they kill one character, but it's the character we all hate in 8. 8 dies, but it's like a fist pump, cheer moment, where you're like, thank God, because she fucking sucks. And she didn't bring anything to the show, but they didn't even kill her via vecna. So there isn't even that connection of like, well, he was number 1, she was 8, they would have known each other at some point. There's nothing. You couldn't even raise the dramatic tension of the villain Vecna, who's become a little puppy dog compared to the terrifying monster he was in season 4. You couldn't even give him something and make us almost like him for a second, because they've killed 8. She just dies from generic army guy. And it's just like, I felt nothing. I just went, I bet you she's the only one to die. And I was right. To skip ahead straight to the end, because I feel like talking about how this show has no stakes is really its biggest issue, even though there's about 5 major issues. The end of this episode, and by the end I mean an hour into this 2-hour episode, because there's 45 minutes of wrap-up, which is absurd. So Elle is afraid that evil generic army lady is going to use her blood and going to keep chasing her down forever, so she self-sacrifices herself in the Upside Down when it explodes and all that stuff. And just the way they film it, I understand that you're probably not going to have all the debris like crush her and like it's like swirling around. It's not going to smash through her and kill her for everyone to see. But the way the scene plays out, it's like, did anyone really think for a single second she was actually dead? Like, why would I? Ted Wheeler didn't die. Why would I expect you to do this at the end and actually kill 11? It's like so obviously going to end exactly the same way as season 1 ended, where, oh my God, she sacrificed herself. She killed the big Demogorgon. This time it's Vecna, but she dies. And Mike's like, no, where'd she go? And then it ends some months later, and there's that little hint that maybe she's alive. Obviously, that's what's going to happen. Why would they change their original ending? That show originally was going to be 1 season. They didn't realize they were going to become the global phenomenon that it is. So, like, that was the show. That's the ending. And so, of course, that's how it's going to go. Why would it be anything different other than the incredibly safe, predictable, lazy ending? It just feels really uninspired. Like, I always knew this is how the show was going to end, but I thought I would feel something. Like, feel some kind of deep satisfaction of like, oh, it's so bookended. It's such a beautiful book ending. And somewhere deep inside me, the idea of them playing D&D together at the end, just like in the start of the first episode of season 1, there is something beautiful about that. But because of everything that's happened this season, I found it just to be really boring and predictable and just kind of like a bit eye-rolling and cringe, instead of that like wholesome, beautiful, sweet, kind of safe, nice ending that it is meant to be. I just find all of the issues of season 5 just bundle up, and my only takeaway, just like Game of Thrones season 8 and Rise of Skywalker, 2 things I absolutely love but ends atrociously, the visual effects are fantastic, and some of the big CGI stuff is amazing, and the same happens here. It's a good continuation and conclusion to the Mind Flare to have it be a big CGI monster and it runs about and goes rah, 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 and does a big Godzilla. And whilst it's completely weightless and it's a CGI mess in terms of the scene of just the whole cast running about in a green room as this giant CGI thing stomps about, and you know no one's going to die and they're all throwing fire at it and stuff, and it's just like, it's weightless, it's pointless, and it's stupid and it's nonsense, but visually speaking, stunning. And so yeah, I'm just left a little like, I don't know, man. Like, visually pretty cool. I would say out of the whole 2 hours, the only thing that really like, I genuinely felt like that's maybe the most satisfying thing they could have done, and it's probably the only really true, beautifully fantastic moment, is Vecna's all dead on the spike, and he's all like, oh, he's bleeding out, and like, they're taking all the tubes out of all the kids, and it's like meant to be a moment of like, oh, they saved the kids. I'm like, you know shit, they saved the kids. No one thought the kids weren't going to be safe. Like, what are they doing wasting time with this? And then it cuts to Vecna, he hasn't died yet, and finally, the show in which it had forgotten who the main character from season 1 really was, the emotional core of why we all fell in love with this show, Joyce. And Joyce looks at Vecna and she's like, you motherfucker. and she grabs an axe and she cuts his head off. That was amazing. Like, I will give this show credit where credit is due. That scene was fucking awesome. It's frustrating because it's like this whole season, I think you could piece together maybe 2.5 hours of truly the greatest finale to this show, of what we actually got. But you have to wade through so much of Holly running through a mind palace, and Steve death fake-outs, and characters talking to each other, repeating the same stuff we've heard again and again and again and again, and everybody just saying stuff that I just don't feel has any dramatic tension or weight. It ruins those moments, and those moments almost frustrating. It's like, God, that was a good moment. This could be good. This could have been great. And instead, it's just so disappointing. So the last 45 minutes is wrapping up all of our main characters. And man, it was a relief that we didn't get a 15-minute scene with Holly, even though ending the show with Holly made me sick to my stomach. And I mourned the fact that Mike wasn't the main character anymore, as he looked down on the main character of season 5, and the show ended. And I was so sad. It was utterly depressing. I wasn't mourning the loss of innocence and the beautiful passing of the torch. I was mourning the fact that this show wasn't good anymore. Holly being the main character of season 5 is impossibly frustrating, and all of Vecna's Mind Palace stuff and the Mr. Watts stuff is just trying to recreate using the actor without the Vecna makeup on, but it's like completely contrived and pointless, and it's completely unnecessary, and it's just padding, and it's just trying to squeeze all the juice you can out of this great actor who was fantastic in season 4. But what's even more telling, with the fact that Holly has so much more screen time than anyone else, is that it kind of speaks to the fact that everybody's stories and arcs are pretty much mostly complete, except for Will, who was underbaked in season 4 and needed this season to really become the character we all wanted him to become. Every single other character is kind of just standing about. They are glorified, highly overpaid extras. I call this issue the Cersei effect. And whilst I love that the actor of Hopper got paid probably an absurd amount of money to stand about and look at other characters do stuff sometimes in just big group wide shots that are all just kind of standing there being like, Stranger Things, right? And whilst I love that all these characters got paid to do essentially nothing, I also would have kind of loved arcs. Character stuff happened. Yeah, I would have liked character arcs. But it really does speak to the fact that it's kind of all done. Very much like Cobra Kai. A lot of spinning the wheels, a lot of rinse and repeating of things in the past. And not to speak about every single character, but I'll do a few for examples. Hopper, the first half of the season is just rinsing and repeating his stuff with Elle from seasons 2 and 3, and also mixed in a fake-out self-sacrifice that he does at the end of episode 4, which he did at the end of season 3 finale. It's just all the same stuff, remixed and rinsed and repeated, because they don't have anything for him to do. And his conclusion in this episode is finally having that dinner at the restaurant Enzo's with Joyce. And that works. But if you get rid of 6.5 of these episodes in this season, that still works. Nothing changed. There's nothing in this final season for him. He's just standing about until the conclusion of season 4 comes into this season. They just didn't have anything for him. So it makes you go, maybe you just didn't need to do 8 episodes. Same with Jonathan, Steve, and Nancy. Whilst I disagree with the idea that Nancy goes off by herself, I think all of season 4 was built around her and Steve realizing they are fit for each other and that he has grown to become worthy of her. And, it's like they weren't working. He went off on his own, grew as a character, and now they're totally working. And that's what we were building to, I thought. And so I just disagree with that. But if that's what they were really building up within season 4, everything in this season for 7.5 episodes is mostly just characters like rinsing and repeating the dynamics of season 1. And then we get one scene where Jonathan and Nancy break up, and then one scene where Jonathan and Steve go, hey, we hate each other, but at least we can agree Nancy's pretty cool. And that's it. But you could get rid of 6.5 episodes of this season, and those couple of scenes still work. It's a 3-episode season that took 8 episodes and 10 hours to do. And to me, that's baffling. And it kind of ruins all the good stuff. Because it's like, I don't want to rewatch all this trash to get to the good, juicy stuff. And it's crazy, because season 4 was so overly long, yet it justified its runtime. I don't understand how they just completely ran out of material. It's like they felt like they needed to have a big final season. It's almost like they looked at Game of Thrones and went, man, Game of Thrones rushed it. They rushed the ending. But they didn't rush it by like a couple of hours. They needed like 2 more seasons to do that final season because there's so much there. This kind of done the opposite. Maybe you could have turned this into 2 big 2-hour episodes and just done it. Big final season. Vecna went from a really fascinating, interesting, scary villain to just like a really generic CGI bad guy. Vecna in season 4 was such a fantastic villain. It finally felt like the show had a real villain, a tangible villain, and the beautiful combination of the backstory of Henry, of Vecna just slowly doing his Freddy Kruegerness throughout the season, and all the backstory with one, and that all interweaving and connecting to be one character was actually phenomenal. And it was so exciting and interesting, and it felt like we finally had our endgame character, our villain, someone who had a human connection to our main character, L. And in this season, he went from a real terrifying threat who was actually killing characters to a character who was essentially babysitting like 12 children in his mind palace. And it's just very underwhelming, very unsatisfying, and most importantly, not scary. It wasn't a scary villain anymore. He wasn't doing anything to make me go, man, he could really win. Like, I know he's not going to win, but you got to try and trick me and convince me that maybe he could win. Because otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels for 7 episodes until they all team up and with friendship beat him. I don't feel like anything to do with Vecna this season justifies the length of the season. So much of each season has been, it's not just a supernatural, vaguely horror-light kind of show, it's also a mystery. There is an element to mystery and the discovery of what's going on in that mystery for each season, 4 being the most interesting one. And then in this season, they spend so long being like, oh my god, who's Mr. What's-It? Oh, it's Vecna. Who the fuck else would it be? And then they spend another part of the season building up, like, oh, what's the mystery of the Upside Down? There shouldn't be a mystery to the Upside Down. It's fine just being this parallel evil dimension. And then so they reveal that, which is underwhelming. It's a wormhole. Going too big, going Marvel style, going way too big. And so you lose sight. It's like it's a weightlessness. It's like, who cares? I know this isn't going to happen. So you lose all that human connection to what made Vecna interesting. Now it's just this big, evil CGI monster guy who's like, I'm going to crush my world into your world. And it's like, no, you won't. But sure, let's pretend you will. And then the final mystery of the show and of Vecna is, oh, maybe the Mind Flayer is behind everything. But that wouldn't be satisfying. The Mind Flayer has not been a part of the show for like 2 full seasons. To suddenly reveal it's behind everything and Vecna's like just a pawn would undermine the last 2 seasons. So that's obviously not going to happen. So once again, it's not a twist or a reveal. It's a predictable, obvious thing that there's some kind of symbiotic thing where they're working together. But it doesn't really hold any weight. It doesn't make me go, oh my god, the whole show, it's all connected. It's just like Vecna goes, I can upgrade and now I'm a big spider. It's like, okay, I just think it's incredibly predictable. The only thing that's stopping me from hating that reveal is that I am just glad that they didn't make Vecna like an anti-hero at the end. I kind of knew they wouldn't, but there was like 2 seconds where I'm like, Will's going to be like, believe in yourself, Vecna, and Vecna's going to be like, I will. Whilst I would have loved to see Vecna with the core 5 playing D&D at the end, that would have been a really fun visual to end the show. I am glad that he ended up being the main villain, because it's like, why bother spending the last 2 seasons building him up? But yeah, he's a bad villain now. The human connection with Al is essentially irrelevant. The stuff with Will, whilst interesting, doesn't really feel like it comes full circle at the end. Will just kind of gets into his mind and helps fight him with Al. And it's like that kind of stuff. I'm like, we spent 8 episodes building this up, and essentially Will just kind of goes, and it's like, I don't know, man. With so much build-up of Will and Vecna this season, to have it play out just so predictably just felt rather uninteresting for me. It wasn't the worst thing ever. We knew he would get into his mind and affect him in some way, but it just played out exactly how I imagined, in the most lazy, unimaginative way it would play out. I was just hoping for a twist, a surprise, or something visually interesting that like really wowed and shocked me. But, once again, credit where credit's due, at least they didn't pull a Bran and have him not be in the battle and get, like, sidelined or something like that. Like, at least there was a moment where he affected Vecna and his eyes went white and you're like, he's in the battle. It still felt kind of just, yeah, unfortunately very predictable and uninteresting, but at least he was doing something. So I'll give it credit where credit is due. In season 4, we had a fantastic secondary antagonist. A secondary antagonist is very needed for a show like this and a story like this. In season 4, we had Jason, a fascinating, interesting, complex human villain. A man driven by grief and revenge who is just totally misunderstanding this situation. And you're taking this really generic jock character who has great kind of charisma and charm. He's like a basketball guy and he's hyping up the crowd. And then you change and you morph and you pervert that kind of charming, kind of charismatic leading man jock kind of character. And you're making the focal point of turning the town into this angry mob, and you play around with all that satanic panic situations going on at that time, and you just make a really complex, interesting, fascinating villain that I truly found as scary, if not more scary, than Vecna. This season, we have generic old army lady. If it wasn't played by Sarah Connor, I might have already forgotten that she existed, and I only finished the season 35 minutes ago. Such an utterly underwhelming, underdeveloped, uninteresting villain that is just there to push a really contrived point to force 11 into a situation at the end to recreate the end of season 1 in a really forced, contrived way that doesn't work at all. She's not an actual character, but really a plot point that needs to push other characters into a situation. I didn't really believe her. She knew Vecna was a threat, yet never cared. She's just like, I gotta get this girl. Why? Because we've crafted the end to go this way and we need her to push them that way. Even though from a human emotional point, it doesn't work or make sense. She's not a real character. And if you just compare to what we had in season 4 with Jason, it's incredibly disappointing and just kind of frustrating because it's like, what a wasted opportunity to have something that could at least be something, and yet it's nothing. And also to waste Sarah Connor, such a great actress, it feels doubly insulting. So yeah, it's just one of the biggest weak elements to this season, which is saying quite a lot because that's everything in this season. I understand her motivations, but I don't believe them to be motivations driven from a human-like emotion that makes sense. She really just feels like a plot point that's kind of morphed into a character. Just like pieces moved around a board. It doesn't feel like it's coming somewhere with real emotion, which Jason was, which made him so scary and interesting. Whereas this, she's just like, I'm mean army lady, gets me 11. And then when 11 sacrifices herself, ugh, so obvious, she's just no longer in it because she wasn't a character. So there's no need to conclude something that wasn't a real character and was just a plot point in the script. In conclusion, I am bitterly disappointed with this season, but it hasn't ruined my love of this show in general. It's just a bit of a strange, weird final season that I don't love. But hey, I can watch all of season 4 and then just pause it 10 minutes before it ends and go, guess they shot him in the face and he died. What a great end. At least that way, Dustin ends up with his girlfriend, rather than this, in which he doesn't. Seriously, what happened to Dustin's girlfriend? I don't recall her having a final scene. Did the actress get cancelled between seasons? Did the actress read the script and go, oh no, this is terrible? What happened? Seriously, what happened?